Okay, so, in my last video, I went in on the MCU's Multiverse, but today, it gets worse. But before we move on to Sony and Multiverse of Madness, I want to respond to a few things you guys said in my last video. You guys actually brought up some very good points, but I want to explain my points a bit further. So, if you haven't seen part 1, I highly recommend you go and watch that video before you watch this video. I won't spend too long on these points, but nonetheless, I'll still expand. Okay, so let's start with the fact that all of these points I bring up are nitpicks. I kind of get where this point is coming from, as some of the points I do bring up are easily overlooked in order to enjoy something for what it is. The issue I have is that all these little things and inconsistencies in the multiverse add up and really don't allow you to enjoy it as much as you could. For example, if Electro coming to the MCU despite not knowing Peter's identity was the only thing that I could criticize, then I wouldn't have even batted an eyelid. To point out only that would be a nitpick, but since these inconsistencies are so frequent, almost as if the MCU is turning back on itself with every film that it releases, I can't excuse it. Speaking of Electro, let's move on to what some people said about him. People are claiming that when he said he was absorbing data at the end of TASM 2, he found out Peter's identity then, and thus is the reason why he is transported to the MCU. First of all, this is a theory, and is never discussed in any discourse in the film, which means we're making up excuses for Sony and Marvel for not thinking about this issue when they clearly did not intend to explain it. If this was the case, and this is the reason to why he was in the MCU, it's a pretty big thing to leave out, since Electro in TASM 2, as far as we know as an audience, has no clue who Spider-Man is. Even if this was the case, how would he even find out Peter's identity as Spider-Man by absorbing public data? The whole reason Spider-Man has a secret identity is that it's not public knowledge.
Kind of defeats the whole anonymous superhero thing.
Therefore, he'd have no way of inquiring this information. Anyway, in my opinion, it's not a very good explanation, and like I said, it's only a theory. And the last thing that people are saying is that when Loki and Sylvie confront Kang at the end of Loki, it takes place out of time, which means that the multiverse by a technicality already existed during Doctor Strange 1. This is the most positive argument to my critique because I feel like it actually holds some ground when you really think about it. However, where it falls apart is that you could also make the argument the other way around. That at some point, even though this moment could exist when the multiverse is split, this moment would have also occurred when the timeline was fixed in place, as Doctor Strange 1 and all of the events that take place in that movie were a part of the so-called sacred timeline. Which means that the Ancient One knew about the multiverse before there was even a multiverse, since this moment happened during an event that was present in the sacred timeline, when the multiverse didn't exist. Hopefully that makes sense. Anyway, onto the actual video. The first thing I want to talk about is Sony, and you guys know that I feel bad for them. I feel bad that they got wrapped up in all of this multiverse shenanigans because they clearly have no idea what they are doing. Venom got transported from the Sonyverse into the MCU and back by the end of No Way Home, which is great because that's exactly how it works. They got that one right. But then in Morbius, Adrian Toomes turns up in the Sonyverse. Okay, I really want to give them the benefit of the doubt and allow them to explain it in either Venom 3 or Madam Web or something or other in the future, but I can't help but be baffled by this. The idea was that people who knew Spider-Man's identity would be taken to the MCU, but there was nothing that said anyone from the MCU could travel to another universe. Once again, I'll give this the benefit of the doubt. Only because at this moment in time, we don't know if anyone else from the MCU has been taken out and put into the Sonyverse or any other universe. Maybe some of the MCU characters got transported and the whole multiverse was messing up. But from what we've seen and from what we know from No Way Home, this is not the case, and Adrian Toomes is the only person to be transported to another universe. Therefore, once again, the MCU's multiverse makes no sense whatsoever. And yes, this one is on Sony. But this whole idea in general just leaves me with so many questions. Does this mean that when the multiverse breaks that characters can be sent to other universes that we've seen? Why do characters only go to the Sonyverse? Have characters been taken to Toby and Andrew's universes? If it was people who knew Spider-Man's identity that got taken when the spell was reversed, like Adrian Toomes, then why did Ned, MJ, or practically the entire world not get affected by this? I guess a case in point can be made that people forgot Spider-Man's identity at the end of No Way Home, but the issue is that Adrian Toomes clearly got transported at the same point that everyone from No Way Home got sent back to their respective universes. So why did no one else? Oh, my brain can't even take it anymore. Anyway, let's leave Sony alone for a moment and go back to the MCU. But remember to keep what I've just talked about in mind, because we're going to be returning to Adrian Toomes very soon. So, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. This is the pinnacle of bad writing in terms of the multiverse. First of all, let's start with America Chavez. Okay, so America Chavez's whole thing is that she's the self-proclaimed only America Chavez in the entire multiverse. But how? Okay, so to understand what I'm about to say, you're going to have to really think about it, because this is going to get really complicated. So when Sylvie splits the time stream by killing Kang, the multiverse opens, and we're assuming that this is when the multiverse becomes available. We know that some of these split timelines are the differing events that occur in What If, as I previously explained in my last video. We can also confidently assume that the alternate universe with the Illuminati that Doctor Strange comes across in Multiverse of Madness is another one of these alternate timelines that has split from the sacred timeline, since Strange and Wanda's variants look exactly alike, and this universe also encountered Thanos in a similar fashion to the MCU. Okay, so that's a quote-unquote separate timeline, but the film also describes this as being a alternate universe. This is where the problem arises. It's all well and good saying that America Chavez is the only version of herself in the multiverse, but the issue is that the multiverse is consisted of branched timelines. These split timelines are from Loki in particular, which means it's impossible for America Chavez to be the only version of herself. So, for example, if America Chavez at the start of the film dies instead of escaping, that creates an alternate timeline. If America Chavez decides to not run from Strange in their first encounter, this creates another alternate timeline. And if America Chavez is captured and killed by Wanda, this creates, once again, an alternate timeline. And as I said before, an alternate timeline in this multiverse is also the same thing as a quote-unquote different universe, which means there are multiple America Chavezes in the multiverse, several that will be entirely different from the original based on differing events that occurred in Multiverse of Madness alone. And the worst part about this all isn't just the fact that the writers didn't communicate their own rules of the multiverse, because Doctor Strange and Loki were written by the same guy! This one dude who created the rules of the multiverse in Loki, which basically saw the multiverse be created by splitting the sacred timeline, which then was followed up by What If, exploring those split timelines, which was then followed up by Multiverse of Madness, the film which claims that this one character is the only version of herself in the entire multiverse, when the events of that movie could create several split timelines, creating multiple versions of that same character. And before anyone says I'm nitpicking again, it's a writer's job to get these things right. It's a writer's job to secure rules and regulations of your own story and world. Once again, the rules of the multiverse are contradicted. Once you start playing with timelines in different universes and merge them together, it gets complicated. Not to mention, this still doesn't explain why Toby and Andrew look so different to Tom's Spider-Man. I don't even want to try and figure that one out anymore. Anyway, let's move on to the next problem with Multiverse of Madness, and that is incursions. Okay, so I see what they are actually doing here, because incursions are going to be a big part of Secret Wars and Kang Dynasty. So, fair enough. And I also think that raising the stakes of the multiverse by threatening its inevitable demise is good as well. It will add so much intensity and purpose for the heroes to come out on top in the two Avengers films. And I won't lie, it actually gets me excited to see how they utilize it. However, it causes a certain issue in the present. Surprisingly, it isn't really the MCU that has been mainly affected here, rather Sony. Obviously, No Way Home had 8 people come from varying universes, which could have caused a mass incursion, but we don't specifically know at this point in time how long it takes or the amount of people it takes for an incursion to occur. So in No Way Home and Loki's case, I can give it a pass. It's Sony and once again Morbius that I can't give a pass on. So let's break this down. If someone from a different universe spends too much time outside of their own universe, an incursion will start to occur, meaning the death of that universe. Okay, so what about Adrian Toomes? Because it doesn't look like he's going to be returning to the MCU anytime soon. He literally has no way of getting home, and no one even knows of his disappearance. So him being there will almost certainly cause an incursion, right? Once again, different films using different rules. It's getting frustrating because this could have been all avoided if they actually communicated with one another, but quite clearly, they didn't, with each film having their own interpretation of how the multiverse works. And to be fair to Sony, I do feel bad for them. They probably were never told by Marvel Studios that they were introducing the idea of an incursion. And I think this idea was clear in No Way Home as well, but luckily they got away with that one. In conclusion to this two-part rant about the multiverse, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and I just wanted to point out its inconsistencies and writing flaws. These aren't nitpicks, these are genuine criticisms that add up over time and create something really messy. If you enjoyed this video, however, make sure to leave a like. We're so close to 20,000 subscribers, so I'd love it if you press that subscribe button and hit the bell as well. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Take care, and peace.